again. Dr. David Donarski is going to be doing most of the presentation today, but I'm starting it off to just give you the quick overview of the Brain Center of Green Bay. And this ties in significantly to the topic that we're talking about, which is a practical understanding of how our brains work and change. And that's one of the keys, because we have a lot to say on how our brains are going to work. And understanding not only what we can do, but how it works and why it works is so important. And the scientific name of this is neuroplasticity. And Dr. Donarski is an expert on this subject. He and I have been meeting for about 5 years on the brain science. And neuroplasticity is the key word in it. Our ability to make our brains work better, or if we ignore them, to let them do their own thing, which sometimes is not what we want. So, how did we get into the Brain Center? We were founded in 2017, but we'd been working even before that. 5 healthcare professionals, 3 retired doctors, all of whom had personal experience in dealing with neurodegenerative disease and seeing the need to do more other than just accept the brain the way it is. So we're talking about being up to date on what can be done and to prevent brain disabilities and to maximize our brain health. And using healthy lifestyles is very, very important in doing that. Our vision for the Brain Center is that every person will enjoy optimal, the best possible brain health throughout their lifetime. And we are a nonprofit organization that works to maximize brain health throughout life, through the entire span of life, from conception through pregnancy and through all of our lifespan. And we want to see not only individuals take action for themselves, but society become aware that we can all do more. And the Brain Center is doing this through collaboration, working with other good organizations that can help to improve brain health and to advocate not only for improving brain health, but advocate for those individuals who are struggling because of brain problems. And research, we want to know the latest information, and we are finding all sorts of amazing things that can be done to improve our brain health. And one of the keys with this is education, so that you're listening today and we are trying to educate. Not only do we educate ourselves, and we're working hard at that, we educate individuals, families, groups. So we are committed to making brains better, to maximize brain health through, as we said, CARE, collaboration, advocacy, research, and education. Who will we help? We can be of help to people, to individuals, to their families, and to groups. We have trained personnel, and we are coaches. We are not your doctor. We are here to help people deal with improving their health. And the key factors in this are what we eat, our diet, our nutrition, physical exercise, our sleep, our lifestyle, our families, our social activities, all sorts of factors that will stimulate our brains to improve our brain health and to improve our quality of life. We will also help our community at large with education programs such as we're having today. And we talk to lots of groups. We want everybody to be informed on how to have your brain as healthy as you can. And it seems like so much more emphasis has been placed on cancer, on heart disease, and diabetes, but our brains have been sort of neglected. And we're going to try to get rid of that neglection. And we can go to businesses, corporations, and organizations to help educate their staff, their employees on the path to better brain health. As I said, we have trained personnel and qualified coaches, retired physicians, people that have great interest, retired nurses, and we're expanding in our coaching staff so that we can take care of as many people as desire to see us. We want to raise the awareness of impaction of brain disorders. These are epidemics that we're dealing with, epidemics of dementia, of Alzheimer's disease, of Parkinson's disease, and of brain injuries. And we will help, by working with other organizations, help the people that come in to see us get to where they need to be going to get the maximal help. We'll work in collaboration with their healthcare providers, with wonderful nonprofits such as Aging Disability Resource Center, Cerebral Palsy, Curative Connections, Aspiro, Family Services, and many others. So we have an office facility. We're sitting in that right now. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, we had to shut down our operation for a while, but now we are starting to get going on it. We have full-time executive director and office manager that will help us do our operational activities. And we will utilize volunteers to assist in providing these services and coaching. As I said, we have significant collaborative relationships with healthcare providers, nonprofit organizations, educational institutions, religious organizations and churches, government organizations. And being a nonprofit organization, we do encourage donations, but we've had excellent support from a number of donors, and we do not charge for our services. So what are our programs like? What topics are we covering? We want to maximize our brain health. We want to teach people what they can do to keep their brains healthy. And as we age, our brains tend to lose some of their abilities. There are ways we can maintain better brain health. Unfortunately, there are diseases that are going to occur, some of the dementias, Alzheimer's, and so there are ways that we can minimize that problem, and in some cases even cure it or at least reverse it somewhat. So we will help people understand. If they have a diagnosis that they don't understand, we can sit down and explain those things to them so they know what they're dealing with. We want to have people eat healthy nutrition because our brains respond much better to certain types of foods. Certain types of exercise are very important for our brains. We want to prevent falls. Falling and getting hurt should be a never occurrence, never. Sleeping is very important. That's when our brains recalibrate. Stress we need a little bit of stress to stimulate our brains, but we don't need too much stress to make us sick. Spirituality is very, very important. You know, someday we are all going to die. Let's make approaching that event more understandable, and more pleasant. So, and we are going to talk and teach on nutrition for our body and our brain. So, with that, I will introduce our leading presenter today, Dr. David Donarski. Dr. Donarski is a retired psychiatrist. He and I have been meeting most Tuesday mornings for the last 5 years. He has educated me so much on what we can do, and we keep working. And so, with that, with no further ado, Dr. Donarski, here you go.
Thank you, Dr. Luloff, and it's always nice to be able to follow you because you do a bang-up job as far as giving out information. First of all, I just want to let you all know that my credentials probably are best said at I'm 86 years of age, and I think that in itself is a meaningful thing because if you look at life expectancy for males in the world today, it's 86 years. So I've been able to attain that, which makes it important. One of the things that I really would want you to walk away from today's presentations with is an understanding of neuroplasticity, being able to recognize how that applies to you and your lifestyle at the present time and what you're able to do with it. Some information you need. We only have about 4,500,000 neurons, and I don't know who counted them, but basically these were formed when your mother was pregnant with you and in very early life. Now, when I said the 4,500,000, you thought, well, that's got a lot, but that's per hour, folks, for a long period of time. So we have a number of brain cells that are there, and basically the message, if you don't use it, you lose it, applies a lot to our brain as we continue to go older. Now, again, keep in mind that that there's a lot of synapses that are occurring. And so during pregnancy and early life, about 42 million synapses are formed per minute. Think about that. Pregnancy is only 9 months, but think about how many minutes that is. And think about the fact that those are still forming in early life. So we got a bunch of them up there, but the old saying of if you don't use it, you lose it does tend to occur throughout life. Now, at my age, I'm not forming them as much as my great-grandchildren are forming them, but I can still form one maybe a week, and that does help continue going because we do lose the cells throughout our life. Now, the connections in the brain from the neuron to neuron, it is thought that about 20,000 synapses per brain cell. So that really equals a tremendous system in our brain. If you go away from today's presentations with the understanding that this is a pretty remarkable piece of humanity that is sitting in our skulls, and being able to recognize that the neuroplasticity aspect, yes, that means that they're able to change, they're able to form, they're able to do, is a cradle to grave. Now, do my great-grandchildren form more than me? Of course. But think about the fact that I'm still forming some, and even though I may have to use some techniques like reading and concentration and meditation, etc., to be able to continue, I still recognize that there can be an occasional brain cell in this whole brain of mine. So keep that in mind. But if you don't use them, you lose them because it's not any other thing that's going to happen. Your brain cells need the stimulation. Now, there's support group cells in the brain, and these are generally called glial cells or supporting nanny cells because you do have to have ways of being able to take care of the neurons that are in the brain. And I just want to make sure I say this. The clutter that occurs from the metabolism in the brain does have to be cleared out. And that is a significant process that comes in, and that has to occur nightly. And this is where sleep is expected to come in most important, because if you don't have your garbage truck coming through in a nice sleep sort of time, you tend to have a buildup of these metabolic particles, and that's where a lot of the degeneration comes about in the nerve cells. Go to the next one, please. All right. Now, I use some figures. 100 billion neurons. That's quite a few, isn't it? You know. Now, when you think about it, look, the bottom one is saying we have 164 trillion synapses. I'm sorry, I can't think at that level. I just really have difficulty being able to recognize, but I can say I think it's enough to take care of all of the things that I want to stimulate my brain with for my lifetime. The brain is a tremendous, tremendous organ, and it's only about 3 pounds or in a body weight, and it is something that is truly remarkable. So if you think you got a great computer when you bought one, and the electronic system is working well, it's still not even close to what the brain can do in its connections and what it's capable of being able to do through its plasticity aspect. Next one, please. All right. And how does the brain do all this sort of stuff? Okay. How basically how does it? It's a tremendous electrical and biochemical complex sort of thing. How many? Just think about the fact of how your body is reacting. You can see, you can hear, you can talk, you can feel, all at the same time. You know, that's a complex sort of activity that's going on in your body on an ongoing basis, and your brain can handle that. Your brain is able to do that. Now, yes, if you got 14 kids and they're not being really running around all over the place, it does get a little heavy sometimes on your brain, but just think about the capability of what the brain is able to do. Use it from another standpoint. How does Aaron Rodgers make the right pass 20 yards down the field to people that are chasing him all over and people who are running away from him, and yet he's able to systematically, regularly make the right pass to complete, and everybody cheers. But nobody really says, what a remarkable brain that man must have to be able to accomplish this. Now, did he practice? Does he keep practicing? Does he do the right nutrition for himself? Does off the field also indicate that he has to take care of himself? That I don't think that it's wise for him to go sleepless for a week. I don't think it's wise for him to overeat. I don't think it's wise for him. Why? Because his contract is a significant one. And if he can't make and do the duties that he's being asked to do, it doesn't pay. So his ability to throw a pass entails him to take care of himself all week long. And folks, not just to take care of himself, but to educate himself, to train himself, to be able to really do all of the things that are necessary. He has to deal with stress. He has to have a social life. He has to do a whole lot of other stuff. I don't imagine it would be wise for him to be able to, do pot every day, or be able to take other things to an inordinate level, like eating too many hamburgers or something. So again, realize that to take care of your brain, you really have to take care of your body or your heart. So again, there's an old saying: if you take good care of your heart, you're taking better care of your brain. All right. I started by asking you if you understand neuroplasticity and how it operates in your brain. We'll have done our job for today. But here is just kind of a run through. It's the ability of our brain to reorganize and organize its operation in response to the new information, the new functional needs, new communication pathways. And also remember this, that it's a unique sort of thing for you, because basically, even if you're an identical twin, you don't do everything the same. So neuroplasticity is at the basis of all of our learning, all of our training, all of our rehabilitation. And I have to really probably add one more thing, the growth that would be present in both physical areas, but mostly in mental areas as well. Next. This would be a nice thing for you to have, to be able to just kind of have a sheet of paper that you could put into maybe a plastic form, that you have the 10 principles of neuroplasticity to be able to take through life, because this basically is your guideline on really and being able to manage your mental but also physical health throughout your lifetime. Use it or lose it. Now that's been said a lot, but please take that into your life. Now, we're not talking about you trying to climb Mount Everest or do something of that nature, but we really are talking about what is your lifestyle about mental exercises, physical exercises, social exercises, etc. Right. Now, use it in improvement, but remember this, you have to use it and do it right if it's going to be improved. So if you do, let's say, using it and you're talking about drinking water and you just continue to keep drinking water, it eventually becomes something that doesn't improve. But being able to be well hydrated is significant, but you do have to set some limits on it. Specificity. Please understand this. The brain does not differentiate from something that you're doing wrong to something that you're doing right. You have to differentiate whether that is a lifestyle for you. So the brain can't decide, well, I'm not going to encode this. I'm not going to do anything about this. So the brain will just operate to the environment that it sits in. So basically, keep in mind that you do have to do it right. I like to use my wife's knitting as an example of this. I mean, I am so impressed with the fact that she has the patience to continue to keep counting the number of stitches that she makes in doing an Afghan or whatever she's doing at that point. And so she is counting, and it's amazing the fact that she has the tenacity to be able to count often enough to be able to make sure that it's done right, instead of being able to just say, what the heck, I don't want to count that again. But she is very specific in saying, got to have the right numbers. And I keep saying, who is going to know the difference? And she says, I will. All right. And repetition really matters. I read an article some years back that said about 10,000 times is about right if you're going to ingrain it into your overall system. Now, that's quite a few repetitions, but think about walking. Think about talking. I mean, how many times have you practiced being able to do these things? But it does recognize if you don't do it right and you continue to do the repetitions, you're going to learn to do whatever it is that you are doing. So please remember, repetition and specificity is important. Now, intensity matters, but and one of the things that's on here is do not go to exhaustion, because why? Basically, exhaustion does other things. It is either harmful because you're overextending the musculature, or it's wearing out, and we do have a stamina lever. So you have to realize that you don't want to leave your expertise on the practice field. You want to do it, but you really have to make sure that you don't go to exhaustion. And this is where the 10,000 repetitions come in, and the time matters. How long does it take for you to run a mile and how many repetitions of your legs are going on at that period as you're running and you're breathing, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, again, it's 10,000 repetitions are significant if you're going to improve and going to improve. Salience matters. I like to put it this way. Being yourself matters in what you're doing. You have to be able to be uniquely saying, what is it that my body needs? What is it that my brain needs? What is it for us to be able, for me to do to best help myself matters. Age matters, and I can tell you, I got 86 years to say this to you. The younger you are, the more pliant you are. And so it's very easy for me to walk kind of hunched over and shuffle my feet. Thank God I have a good wife who tells me about it and basically says, head up, straighten up. Because again, gravity does take over, and being able to not pay attention, to do it right, to have it specific. So I have to concentrate more often on not walking wrong to be able to walk right. I like this one. Age does matter. I mean, if I'm 4 years old, I can change things pretty quickly. Being 86 is a little bit more different. I've learned, if I've learned to have good habits, I better have a knowledge about how many bad habits have I learned over this period of time. All right. Now, transference is very good. And it's put here in a language way that if you learn one language, it's generally easier to learn another one. And I think this is where kind of the brain gets an ability to begin to look at how to handle some of the situations that come about. So again, if you learn one area, you can probably learn another. So basically, I'll just use golf. If you learn to hit your driver better, you're probably going to learn to hit your putter better too, and your 7-iron, and the other clubs in the bag. And being able to recognize that as you learn better with one club, you're probably going to transfer to learning better with another club. And that applies with social life, that applies with mental life, and other sorts of things too. Interference. Remember this, if you're spending all your time on a golf course, you're not tending to the petunias in your garden. And you have to really kind of look at the fact that being able to have a lot of emphasis in one area, sometimes you have to really kind of look at and maybe put some sort of pattern down to your day. What are you doing? What are you accomplishing? What are you after, so that you know? And very seldom do we take an inventory. Are we doing the things that I really should be doing? And this is, I think, where religion comes in for some people, because it does put them on a track of being able to do certain things at times. So again, these 10 principles of neuroplasticity are important, but please make them unique for yourself, not for somebody else. Neurogenesis. Interesting. I mentioned before, the brain does form new brain cells. But when I was 4 years old, my brain was turning out one heck of a lot more brain cells than it does in my 80s, because that's just not that many being able to be formed. And that is a part of just the way our neural system operates. And again, a lot of, how should I say, a lot of situation depends upon other parts of your body. So in other words, if my heart is working better and my lungs are working better, I get better oxygen up to my brain, and my brain is able to work better. So again, this whole business of neurogenesis is not just upon your brain cell, but upon your whole body being able to have the support it needs to be able to put the basis down for your cells to form. Okay. This is a mirror sort of thing. Motivated to intentionally be repetitious and reliable in every opportunity to restore and rejuvenate my neural functions. So when you look in a mirror, recognize that you do need to be motivated to intentionally be not only repetitious, but reliable in the opportunity to restore and rejuvenate my brain functioning. Next. How does our brain adjust? Okay, basically map extension is very good. In other words, there are parts of your brain that begin to start forming as you do certain behaviors and stuff. And so the more that you do, it tends to be able to expand. So uh, again, people like Aaron Rodgers, who does that, Picasso, who did his number, all those, there's certain parts of their brain that are really expanding out because of the activity that it does. Sensory reassignment is an opportunity for the brain to be able to use more of the senses and being able to accomplish. So it isn't just Aaron Rodgers throwing a pass physically, it's Aaron Rodgers seeing, probably hearing too, the big guys who want to crunch him, and being able to recognize the fact that he's moving. So again, being able to take a sensory sort of thing and use your physical as well as your other senses to be able to finish any sort of a task is important. Compensatory masquerade. I mean, think about the fact of people who have lost an arm, and basically they've had to learn to do everything with the other arm, and they can able to do it. Some people who lost both arms are able to do things with their feet to be able to accomplish things. And so that applies in a lot of other areas, and those are just two concrete areas for you to be able to see that our brain is able to set those things up and to be able to help you be able to accomplish the tasks or the duties that you want to do. In a mirror region takeover is a fact is that it's the ability of the brain to use both hemispheres. It allows it to be able to come through. And I think that probably as we get more and more ability to look at how the brain is functioning, we'll be able to recognize that probably our brains are using both hemispheres much, much more than we normally take it. So it's not I'm just right-handed or right brain or left brain. I'm probably doing more all brain. And that's just my saying now because I can't document that. How does our brain change? This is one thing that you do need to have some recognition is that when you have a brain cell, you have some chemicals that have to come about for it to transfer information from one cell to the next. And so those are called neurotransmitters. And so basically, it's allowing a chemical there to be able to send a message from one cell to another. Increasing the number of receptor sites, being able to, so it's kind of like instead of having a broom with just one thistle coming down, you now have there's a whole bunch of sites that are recepting instead of just one. The synapses also generally, and truly, most brain cells are thought to be able to connect with 20,000 and 20,000 other synaptic connections. So the number of synapses increase. So that's one way of being able to increase the information in the use of your brain by increasing the synapses that are occurring, increasing the number of cells. And as I said, my 4-year-old great-grandson is having more cells formed than I'm forming at the present time. But if I do one a week, that's a pretty good number for 86 years old. Forming metabolic and genetic needs. And this is your brain starving? Is your brain not getting the food that is necessary to get? And I think that you have to also look at what else do you put in there. And I'm not saying this that it's totally abnormally going to happen, but the more you smoke marijuana, the more you drink alcohol, the more you sniff glue, the more you're doing those sort of things, the less chance your brain cells have of being in a good environment and being able to do it. Now, will one time make a difference? I suspect for an occasional person, maybe, will 100 times make a difference. I suspect some people can get by with doing 100. And you have to kind of look at the fact of what your lifestyle is when you're looking at metabolic and genetic needs. So you have to thank your grandparents for some things and then be able to say, wow, I have to really kind of be aware. And look at baldness. Baldness does tend to run in families. And that's no big deal from a standpoint of what's going to happen, but it may have some impact upon how you feel about yourself. And if you're really thinking about the genetic aspect, you can't change that, but you can modify the results of it if you think about what's happening. And so again, there's a number of genetic diseases that can be transferred. And so if you're in that sort of a family status, you do have to have an awareness. And I think what I'm trying to preach to everybody is the fact is that you have to be the result of your own coaching with your health care and being able to take care of yourself. You can't put it off to somebody else. All right. Increasing circulation. The more we understand about the brain, the more demand that we realize. And I'm just going to use this figure. The brain will demand 20% of your oxygen intake. Now, that's if you're breathing normally. But what if you're under breathing? It's still going to demand the 20%, but you may not be putting it in. So when you're watching TV, when was the last time you took a deep breath? Oh, maybe when Aaron Rodgers threw a completion in a competition game sort of thing. When was the last time that you really spent some time realizing how many times that you are not breathing very deeply? And so again, remember, your oxygen is 20% demand in your brain. Please make sure it's getting there. Again, our brain is a marvelous sort of thing. It can form more new blood cells. It can form new sites that can work in the brain. It can. Maybe there's a thing here said executive function moved due to addiction, because addiction is take up, if you feel it's taken over a lot of the mental process areas that are present in the brain, so that the executive functioning has to be in other parts of your brain than just where the addiction is forming. And that being able to form new pathways at 86 doesn't happen very often. At 14, it happens very often. And I think you have to be aware of what your age group is and who you are to be able to answer that question for yourself. Next. Here are some brain facts. Isn't it amazing? 73% of our brain is water. I hope it's good water. In my case, plus water too. I know, but again, so all that's saying is our brain is a very liquid cellular fact. It's not something that is made up of strong things. It's made up of a liquid. I didn't know this for a lot of years, but a 2-year-old brain is only 80% of adult size. And I said only. I hope you caught that. It is 80%. Wow. Think about that. I mean, they still had 20% for it to go, and that brain doesn't reach the full maturity until 25. So think about how you have to really kind of protect yourself. You don't want the little kids bouncing their head against the wall all the time, because it's a matter of being able to recognize that these are maturing cells for a long period of time in our life. You're aware that our brain, the information traveling goes around 300 miles per hour? I mean, that's which in a Formula One racing car, I didn't know that, it's only 240. But so what they're trying to say is that these things happen quickly. It goes fast. Okay. And our brain does generate about 12 to 25 watts of electricity because it does have that energy aspect of it. And it says here that's enough for a low wattage light bulb. And so when somebody says your light is not very bright in your brain, that means they're not working very well. Okay. I don't know how many of you know about the backwards bicycle, but this is a good example of where neuroplasticity comes in. So what happened with the backwards bicycle is that everything was the same, except when you turned to the right, the bicycle went to the left, and when you turned to the left, the bicycle went to the right, and that's all it was. And so, again, there's a video that is out, and if you get a chance to be able, can you show it? Oh, show the backward bicycle then.
All right, I will get that pulled up. Share application, Chrome tab.
Come back to Smarter Every Day. You've heard people say it's just like riding a bike, meaning it's really easy and you can't forget how to do it, right? But I did something. I did something that damaged my mind. It happened on the streets of Amsterdam, and I got really scared, honestly. I can't ride a bike like you can anymore. Before I show you the video of what happened, I need to tell you the backstory. Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill, and I was really proud of it. Everything changed, though, when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses, and they like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle, and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike, ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Justin Salem. First attempt riding the bicycle.
So the faster I go, the better.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. Therefore, knowledge is not understanding. Look, I know what you're probably thinking. Destin's probably just an uncoordinated engineer and can't do it. But that's not the case at all. The algorithm that's associated with riding a bike in your brain is just that complicated. Think about it. Downwards force on the pedals, leaning your whole body, pulling and pushing the handlebars, gyroscopic precession in the wheels. Every single force is part of this algorithm. And if you change any one part, it affects the entire control system. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences, and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this. For instance, this guy, I offered him $200 just to ride this bike 10 feet across the stage. Everybody thought he could do it.
No, you didn't understand. You didn't understand. So, this way. All right, a second. All right, so, whenever you're ready. Yeah. No, you have to keep your feet on. Dude, look. All right, let's get together. Wait. Like, you gotta start rolling at least. And go. Oh, God! All right, back up. Okay, keep your feet on the pedal. Go. Go right off. Just keep your feet on the pedals. Yeah. All right, one more time.
Once you have a rigid way of thinking in your head, sometimes you cannot change that, even if you want to. So here's what I did. It was a personal challenge. I stayed out here in this driveway and I practiced about 5 minutes every day. My neighbors made fun of me. I had many wrecks, but after 8 months, this happened. One day I couldn't ride the bike and the next day I could. It was like I could feel some kind of pathway in my brain that was now unlocked. It was really weird though. It's like there's this trail in my brain, but if I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, my brain would easily lose that neural path and jump back onto the old road it was more familiar with. Any small distractions at all, like a cell phone ringing in my pocket, would instantly throw my brain back to the old control algorithm and I would wreck. But at least I could ride it. My son is the closest person to me genetically, and he's been riding a normal bike for 3 years. That's over half his life. I wanted to know how long it would take him to learn how to ride a backwards bike, so I told him if he learned how to ride a backwards bike, he could go with me to Australia and meet a real astronaut. Are you going to give up?
No.
Go ahead. This is how it starts. Look at this. This is such a big deal. Get up, you got it. Did you see his brain get it? So in how many weeks have we been doing this? 2 weeks? In 2 weeks, he did something that took me 8 months to do, which demonstrates that a child has more neuroplasticity, am I even saying that right, than an adult. It's clear from this experiment that children have a much more plastic brain than adults. That's why the best time to learn a language is when you're a young child. All right, today's bike log. I can ride smooth, I can ride fast. I'm thinking the experiment is over. Okay, now I'm in Amsterdam, a city that has more bicycles than people. The question is, can I ride a normal bike now? I mean, I've spent all this time unlearning how to ride a bike. If I go back and try to ride a normal one, will my brain mess up? So I've tweeted a Smarter Everyday meetup, if you will, and I'm going to see if somebody brings a bicycle, and I'm going to try to ride a normal bike. It's backwards, it's backwards. This was one of the most frustrating moments of my life. I had ridden a normal bike since I was 6, but in this moment, I couldn't do it anymore. I had set out to prove that I could free my brain from a cognitive bias. But at this point, I'm pretty sure that all I've proved is that I can only redesignate that bias. So what you're not seeing is just a group of people here looking at me, looking at the strange American that can't ride a bike because they think I'm dumb. But I'm actually 2 levels deep into this because I've learned and unlearned. All right. After 20 minutes of making a fool out of myself, suddenly my brain clicked back into the old algorithm. I can't explain it, but it happened in a very specific moment.
Got it. I'm back. Oh, click. Hold on, click. I got it. Okay, there it is. There's the moment. Okay, I can ride a bike.
I tried to explain this to the people around me, and they just didn't get it. They thought I was faking the previous 20 minutes, and I couldn't get anybody to believe me.
That looked like I faked that, didn't it?
Yeah.
Just the same thing I'm faking. You don't believe me.
There's some lyrics you were like, la, 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 and this one.
You think I'm lying, don't you?
Yeah, I did.
I'm not lying.
I felt like the only person on the planet who had ever unlearned how to ride a bike, and I couldn't articulate it to anyone because everybody just knew that you can't forget how to ride a bike. So I learned 3 things from this experiment. I learned that welders are often smarter than engineers. I learned that knowledge does not equal understanding. And I learned that truth is truth, no matter what I think about it. So be very careful how you interpret things, because you're looking at the world with a bias, whether you think you are or not. I'm Destin. You're getting smarter every day. Have a good one.
Okay, if you want to support Smarter Every Day, you can download a free audiobook at audible.com/smarter. I recommend Commander Hadfield's book.
Just going to be talking to her? Okay. Can I just say a couple words about the backwards bicycle? I think the important thing that you should walk away from this is that we can learn, unlearn, relearn, and learn again. And again, I think this is the beauty of neuroplasticity. The fact is that it is an opportunity for us to be able to use our brain in another capacity. So again, the fact that stands out at me is this: his riding the backward bicycle only lasted for months before he began to change it around. Now, if he would have done it for 20 years, it would have taken him much longer to be able to unlearn it and to relearn the other. And so I think, again, we have to factor in how long have we been doing this behavior to give us an opportunity to be able to change. And so let's just use one example about, and this I'll just use the chemical addictions. So that if I don't ever stop using the chemical, the chances of me being able to stop using that chemical become less and less. So somehow I have to find a stopping of that chemical that's coming in. So what am I trying to say? I need to take away that stimulus response to be able to learn a new response and the time that it's going to take for that to be able to accomplish it. And basically, this is where I see being younger, being less, how should we say, cemented into our behaviors, and the easier it is to change if we are only doing something for a year versus doing something for 20 years. Now, there's been some sort of communication in the addiction literature to be able to recognize as a fact is that you may have to learn another addiction to be able to get rid of this addiction to be able to accomplish it. And so this is where I think sometimes being able to have another activity. So basically, let's just use this as an example. For me to stop using chemical to be, if I do physical exercise and be able to bring that into my life, and then once I get that settled as a activity, I'll be able to do much better with getting off of my addictive behavior. So it's kind of really interesting about that. One of the things I really want to talk about is that
we have two questions you want to.
Excuse me. Okay.
So, how has the mapping of the human genome helped us better understand the brain?
You know, that's a beautiful question. And I'm not so sure, Mike, I can answer that with any sort of intelligent response. Basically, I think that the only thing that I can come up with as far as an understanding of your question is being able to say, we are getting to know more information about our brains because of examples like this, and the more we learn about our brain, the better chance we have of being able to understand what's going on with the brain.
And then Bob has the question, what role do antioxidants play in brain health?
You know, I can't answer that. I don't really.
Dave, let me poke my head in. There are a number of metabolic complexities that are going on every day in every cell in our body. And one of those is that we need brain fuel. Our brains need good fuel to do all the biochemical things that they do. Sometimes you produce antioxidant or oxidation that is damaging to the cell, almost like it's poisonous. And antioxidants will remove some of those bad chemicals. So they do play a role, but it's a balance. If you have enough fuel, it's good. If you have too much fuel, it may be bad. If you have a number of bad breakdown products from the fuel, you don't want to put bad gasoline in your car. You want to have healthy fuels. So it's a balance, and it's not all or none in most of these factors.
Jeannie has a question. Does this make sense to you if I cannot back a trailer or even my car without overreacting? I don't have a sense of direction, even drying my hair, looking in the mirror. My hand always goes the wrong way. My hand. I want to raise or lower, got forward and back, and I do it wrong. I can close my eyes and feel how to move correctly and do it right. Could something learned early in life cause this?
I think this is a super question because I react to this in several different ways. I think that what you need to do is find a way to help you with this is find a way to be able to accomplish your task without being in a car and being able to do it so that there's not the issue of being in a car. And why this has happened to you is goes for me all the way about how you are seeing other sorts of things. So my first question would be, do you have any other areas in your life where your sense of sight and your sense of direction are having some problems and not just within the car? If it seems to be only in the car, then I would suspect that it's something like a stress response to being in the car and a reaction to that is causing you to be able to do this. So I would think that the only way I would know to be able to help you at this point is to get you in a simulator, maybe even like getting into some of the cars at the fairgrounds or so, and being able to recognize, being able to do that. But I think you need some added help, because sitting in the car probably is enough of a stressor on you to make it difficult for you to have the right ability to make the decisions that you are. So practicing on your kids' little paddle bike or something of that nature. But other than that, I without being able to get into a physical similar environment, I think it would be hard for you to be able to do this. However, if you can get your sense relaxed and at ease and be able to take it in a stepwise fashion, you may have a chance of building it from going from sitting in the car with your eyes closed until you're comfortable, to being able to handle the steering wheel, be able to turn it until you're comfortable. But make sure that you're able to get to a point where you are at peace, are at rest, and comfortable in what you're doing before you take the next step.
Dave, let me add something to that, which we talked about last week. You and I've talked about it. This time of the year, basketball is a big thing. If you watch a lot of basketball, you see some pretty good basketball players in college that can't shoot free throws. Now, shooting free throws is not rocket science. What happens if somebody is having terrible trouble shooting free throws? They go to practice. Okay, what are they practicing? They're shooting free throws. Are they practicing the same thing that caused them to not be able to shoot free throws? One of the golf pros, Andy North from the state of Wisconsin. Andy North won 2 U.S. Opens playing golf. He's an avid basketball fan. He sits on the sidelines behind the Badgers when they play. And his comment about the Badger players that can't shoot free throws, he said, they're doing it all wrong. He said, when I am having trouble on the golf course, he said, what do? I don't go practice right then, because if I go practice, I'm going to keep doing the same old habits. And if you're training with the same bad habits, you're going to continue to have bad habits. He said, I rest for about a week. And while I'm resting, I look at videos on how I was doing it. And then I retrain myself, because all of a sudden I break it down to, okay, this you're doing wrong. This you're doing right. Therefore, I will make sure I do everything right. And I start practicing on each of those steps. Same thing goes with shooting free throws. Same thing goes with driving the car. If you are distracted, the odds are you're going to make mistakes driving the car. And the same thing goes with backing up in the car. So if you want to drive safely and you're having a certain problem, I would suggest that, number one, you go with somebody that can have some experience with you. Might be, if you're a senior citizen, it might be one of your children. Of course, what happens to most senior citizens, they say, I don't want my kids to see that because they'll take the keys away. But those factors enter in. You want to be safe. You want to treat yourself or train your brain with neuroplasticity. You're not thinking this is neuroplasticity, but train your brain to do it right.
Okay, I just want to add one thing. I see in the line, could something learned early in life cause this? I don't know if it was early in life as much as that you have been practicing it for a number of years and that you have been following it for a number of years. So you have to really look at the fact that this behavior has been a sense of what you've been doing for a long time. And I really do think that maybe you need to take this up with an ophthalmologist to be able to recognize what, looking back with your eyes the way you are talking about, has any bearing, if they could be able to help to have a good eye exam with this recognition, and to make sure that there may not be, just to make sure that they're okay, is basically what I'm saying.
All right, Helen has a question. Why and how does medication help the brain?
Meditation.
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 Think about it from a standpoint of quieting down the radio. Think about being able to, when you're doing meditation, what you're really kind of doing is a response to the brain of being able to have a calming kind of an effect upon a number of areas in your brain. So how does it help? Is because, again, the number of the number of stimuli that are occurring under stress become less and less, and the meditation allows the systems to come in. So this is kind of where deep breathing and meditation come together. This is where kind of having a good physical posture and meditation come together, and being able to not have a whole lot of sensory.
Yeah, I think about my brain, and when I have trouble doing something, am I too tired? Am I confused? Do I have too much static in my brain? Do I have brain fog? What's going on? If you want your brain to function well, you want to be trained in what you're going to do, but not be overtrained. You want to be rested, and I think, and those of you who heard me last week, I said, I like to run. What does the running do to me? It gets the cobwebs out of my brain. It gets the static out of my brain. If you want to hear good music, back in the old days when we had radios, there'd be static. Or when the first TVs came out, there was all sorts of interference on the screen. Okay. It's hard to learn when you have static in your brain, when you have too many issues, when you have too much stress. All those factors enter in. And that comes down to what one of our big missions is, to understand your brain, to make sure that you have the right fuel for your brain, that you are rested, you have the right balance in your life, you have the right amount of stress, and all of those factors.
Okay. The question about the toothbrushes, do you notice how the practice, what he's doing is being able to practice using parts of his body and being able to have the stimulus of, doing one side of, one hand doing one thing, one leg doing another thing. It allows the brain to be able to help establish behavior like this. I mean, that's the neuroplasticity aspect.
We'll continue to handle questions as they come in. Dr. Janarski is going to share a few brain facts that you might be interested in, but continue to ask questions and we will respond.
Okay. Basically, I want to get you to understand that your brain is only about 2% of the body weight. Now you have to think about this, that 2% uses 20% of the total energy in oxygen. And so this is where the important part is coming in, is the fact is that your brain is a separate anatomical part, and it needs to be taken care of, and it needs to be kind of used appropriately and being able to recognize. So one of the things that I hope that you get from here is that this small piece of humanity in our skull is a very important thing. So brain exercising, brain taking good care of yourself is significant. And this is where I think sleep comes in. Now, the more we understand about sleep, the more we realize that the metabolic products are probably taken out during sleep. And if they're not taken out, they overall build up to be the plaques that occur in things like Alzheimer's, et cetera, et cetera. And so sleep becomes an essential part of taking care of your brain. And please keep that in mind. And realize another thing. If you use medication to fall asleep, you're going to train your brain to have the medication to help fall asleep. So when you start something like this, you also have to have a plan to stop something like that. Otherwise, you're going to continue to have, and usually what will occur is you require more and more medication to get the same result.
Rich has a question. It appears you're saying neuroplasticity works, but many forces trend it to becoming far slower and less responsive as we age. Could you offer a percentage comparison decline of 70 years of age versus 7 years old?
I'm not sure that I can be correct in just kind of what I'm saying in this, but I would say that basically one of the things that the 70-year-old has to recognize is you're competing with other sorts of behaviors that have been in existence for a long time where the 7-year-old doesn't. Secondly, is a 7-year-old is forming new brain cells much more frequently than the 70-year-old person is being able to do. So they have a better chance of being able to have new mapping occurring in the brain versus having to fight the old mapping that's been there for a long period of time. And lastly, I think is the fact is that most 70-year-olds don't necessarily do their physical activity in the right way, if that's what it is. If you're looking at other sorts of behavior, it may be okay, but basically doing the right physical exercises are an important factor. I hope that got you.
There's one aspect of that, is that your 7-year-old has phenomenal potential, but they haven't learned anything as far as judge a lot of things as far as judgment. I misspoke. They've learned a lot, but they have so much more to learn. And you think about the experience you, as any of us that are grandparents, have in advice to our kids. How much advice do our kids, do those grandchildren, give us? They're there to learn, and we have experience. The statistic I heard, which was interesting, in a book written by a phenomenal neuroscientist, Michael Merzenich, talking about our abilities in our brain. At age 30, we rely upon about 30,000 words of use in our language, in our thinking of our language, in our speaking of our language. When we're 80 and in good health, we use about 10,000 words. As a senior citizen, do I all of a sudden can't think of a name or think of a word? You bet. Happens all the time. Well, my brain only has maintained 30, according to Michael Merzenich, 10,000 words, whereas when I was 30, I was living with 30,000 words. On the other hand, I have a lot more experience at age 79 than I did when I was 30. There were a lot of things I learned later in life And so there are factors that we can rely upon, and there are factors that we don't. And hey, that's all part of knowing that we're all individually different, and we build on our strengths and the things that are critically important to us, we try to train our brains for.
Sleep question from Mary. How much sleep do we really need?
Okay. Basically, I have to come back to be able to say this is still an individual sort of decision. But on average, we need 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. Now, if we miss one night, no big problem. But if we miss several nights, it does become a problem. So again, the sleeping of 7 to 8 hours is a significant one. Now, I'm sure there's some people that require less, and there may be some people that require more. But that's kind of the average that comes about.
Let me throw out a difficult or a little different slant on that, is because Dave Donarski is an expert on sleep, not only for his individual experience, but his knowledge on it. And I say, hey, I'm getting by some nights on 5 hours of sleep. And he says, you need more than that. Okay. Stanley Gupta's new book that we have all, Dave and I have looked at, and it's very, very well written and understandable. He says in here, in his chapter on sleep, he said, the people who say they get by on 4 hours of sleep are misled. He said, we need 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And if we can get closer to 8 hours of sleep, it's much better. And that is the science behind it. And this book is very well written and understandable. And Sanjay Gupta, the neurosurgeon who wrote this book, has been to a number of educational institutions researching sleep. And the studies show that most of us need that 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
And I think you have to add, if you're perfectly feeling in 100% health state on 5 hours of sleep, that may be the rare person that can do that. So again, but if most people who are not getting the amount of sleep will have secondary sort of symptoms with. So if you do, I would sure recommend for you to talk with your doctor about having a sleep study to make sure that this sleep is going to be right for you as an individual. Because again, we're all unique, but the rare person is the one that only requires less than 6 to 8 hours of sleep.
All right, Mike has a question. Do we know how much brain function is due to genetic disposition?
I have to say all of it. I think that again, you got to look at where the genes come, and I can't answer how many genetic markers there are for your brain. I just don't know that as a science sort of answer. But that's a great question, and I think it's something that we can look up as far as the genetic aspect of brain distribution. I would tend to think that there's a list of diseases that are genetically involved that you could find if you went on the internet. And I would also suspect that basically it would be probably known around birth or shortly thereafter that most of the genetic aspects would be there. But there are some genetic things that in childhood diseases that do affect sleep.
All right. Mary asked, what physical help does your brain need?
How often?
Exercise.
Huh?
Exercise.
Yeah, I was going to say, how often do you take a deep breath? And basically, again, when you think about the fact is that you're looking at heart, you're looking at muscle, you're looking at other aspects about the fact that your body's a holistic, complex sort of cells, and you need to be able to take care of it. So I think again, this all of the areas that are necessary. It needs social, it needs nutritional, it needs stress reduction, it needs physical, and needs mental activities, And so I think again that you really do have to recognize your brain is a organ that very much like the heart. If you don't do all of them, it's not right. You gotta do them all.
I'm just going to skip down to Margaret's question because it ties in with Mary's. What are good exercises for the brain?
Oh, for the brain? Okay. I think there are several. Well, one has to look at levels of stress and being able to say what happens and how do you deal with it. And if stress is a healthy thing for you, to be able to recognize that you do need to put yourself under some stress to be able to have a good brain functioning. I also tend to think that you need to do some brain exercises. What do you do to challenge your brain? So you have to look at what are your patterns of thought processes, etc. Well, how much do you stress your brain in an appropriate sort of a manner to be able to accomplish it? And so again, I think that it's very hard sometimes to always have the insight just by looking at it, but think about how often you stimulate your brain to be able to challenge it in a number of different ways, and make sure that it's a good challenge and not a challenge that is causing you disruption, and more of a challenge that is causing you satisfaction, completion, etc., etc.
Dave, I would add to that physical exercise is critically important.
Yeah.
But the physical exercise has to be focused on your individual capabilities and your needs. We're all different. Some of us are capable of walking. Some of us are capable of perhaps jogging or riding an exercise bike. Aerobic exercise, the kind of exercise in which you get a little bit short of breath, but that requires selecting what's appropriate and safe for you. If you have a bad heart, you need medical clearance to do whatever you have to do to be physically fit. Somebody's had a heart attack, they go through cardiac rehabilitation and they get a prescription for what sort of exercise you do. There's no doubt that getting out and walking, if you're capable of walking safely, is the best, safest exercise. But you need to be doing it as frequently as possible, preferably 5 or 6 days a week. In addition to walking, you need to do good balance exercises. Falling is never allowed. How do you do that? Well, you can practice with standing, holding on to your kitchen counter or your bathroom counter and lifting one leg up and then the other leg up and repeating like that. You can practice prancing where you can hold on for balance and literally walking in the house. If it's cold out, if it's slippery out, again, keep moving. Movement is very, very therapeutic, not only for your heart, but for your brain.
There's a question here about, do naps count for required sleep? Not necessarily. It depends when you are napping. And I think, again, this is where the uniqueness of the thing comes in. One of the things I just want to say is you don't want to nap late in the afternoon, and you don't want to nap before you go to bed at night, so sort of thing. So napping should occur in early afternoon, if at all, and it should only be a short period of time, generally under an hour. Maybe for some people it could go up a little bit more, but start napping 3-4 hours in the afternoon, that's going to interfere with your whole circadian rhythm and other aspects about things. So again, a nap, I think, is important. I think if you look at it as more from a lie down and put it down to be able to kind of get away, be able to kind get relaxation and if you do fall asleep. But to sleep 2 or 3 hours is not a nap for me. A nap is under an hour, generally around 30 to 40 minutes. Okay.
10 minutes.
All right. Again, guys, I just want to recognize with you that if you go on the internet, there's about 100 sort of amazing brain facts, or 72 there are, I'm sorry, and just go amazing brain facts and being able to get them off. I just recognize this, is that we're really more asking you to say, what is your lifestyle and what do you need to be able to do from a standpoint of helping yourself or to change some things. Try to make this a lifestyle decision for yourself, not necessarily just an activity.
Any last comments, Dr. Lula?
We have a chance to act in doing things for our health. It has to be understanding yourself and then understanding your needs, having good medical care and checkups, but then taking control of your physical activities. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. For those of you who don't exactly know what kind of exercises you should be doing, we can give you a handout that we have that outlines some of the exercises that are basically safe, but they have to be fine-tuned for you. And so if there's any doubt whatsoever, you need medical clearance from your physician. Then, if you need help on where to go for an exercise program, the YMCA, the YWCA have good programs available. If there are significant medical issues, then you may be best off seeing a physical therapist or going to a clinic or facility that has health coaching. We do health coaching, but we're here to work with any good organization. So those things are available if you have doubts on what to do.
Great. If there's no other questions, I think we can wrap it up. Susan, do you have anything to share?
I don't believe so, other than I just added the message that LLI for years has done line dancing classes. We have a presenter that does line dancing for us. While we are forced to be virtual, he did create several line dancing recordings. So that's nice, because if you've never done line dancing, or if you have, you can do that in the comfort of your own home. And then especially if you've never line danced before, because then when he starts doing in-person line dancing, which he'll start at the Packer, Green Bay Packer, that whole outdoor area, he does the line dancing in summer there, and a lot of our LLI members join him there also. So it would be a good way to start doing it in your home if you've never done it before, and then fit right in as a group when we get back in person.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So I'm going to grab the evaluation form and post that in the chat. I just read the chat that came in. Let's see. If you want to remind people, I did just when the class started, I shared the handouts with everyone too, if they want to check their email. And let's see here.
And then this is Kelsey from the Brain Center. I know Dr. Janarski is doing a presentation on sleep, I think. I'm not sure if that registration is still open or not, but it's on April 6th, I believe. And if you have more questions on sleep, you should check out that presentation because it's extremely informative.
Yep, and we currently have, we had the limit at 50, and there, all 50 seats are filled with a few people wanting to get in yet. So we can talk about that if we want to increase that capacity.
Sounds good. We'll chat about that and then I'll let you know.
Yes, but if anybody that's in this class that would like to, that think they could benefit from Dr. Donarski's sleep class, go ahead and email lli@uwgb.edu and let them know that if we increase the capacity that you would like to be included. And okay, so here is the course evaluation. So my apologies for not being on top of that a little bit quicker. But so it is posted in the chat section. So I just posted it. So click on that link and fill out the course evaluation for us if you could. And let's see. So yeah, big thank you to Dr. Donarski, Dr. Lulaf, and Kelsey, and oh my gosh, I'm reaching for the other gal's name and I apologize. Chris. Okay, so a big thank you to you guys. And LLI members, just so you know, the doctors typically do this, these classes for LLI in person, usually at the Mothi Center. They have been so good to our organization for several years now by offering to give classes for us. Always very popular, always information that our LLI members want to know about. So we offer a big thank you for the Brain Center and the doctors and Kelsey and Chris for being in there and doing this for our group. So much appreciated. Any final questions then before we wrap up? LLI members, you can go ahead and raise your hand if you do, otherwise we'll call it a day. All right, so Mary, go ahead and you can unmute your mic.
I can't see the chat. Where's the chat?
Okay. And do you have your camera? You want to turn your camera on? Do you have a question or?
No question. I just want to know where I can chat.
So do you have the white panel at the right-hand side of your screen open? Like clicking on the bright purple tab at the bottom right of your screen?
Yes.
And then the 4 icons at the bottom, the very first icon is your chat bubble.
It says no chat message yet.
Okay. Does it say everyone at the top of that screen or not?
Everyone, yes.
Okay, so you should see at the bottom say something in the box.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, thank you.
Great. You're welcome. All right, I think we are set. So thank you, everyone.